Hi everyone, I'm Priyanka Prakash, Senior Staff Writer at Fundera. Today I'll show you how to fill out IRS Form 941. Form 941 is a form that businesses file quarterly to report withheld income taxes from their employees' wages, as well as the employer and employee share of Social Security and Medicare taxes, which are together called FICA taxes. In general, if you'll be paying wages of more than $4,000 per year, giving you a tax liability of more than $1,000 per year, then you'll need to submit Form 941 on a quarterly basis. Let's get started with the form. To begin, indicate the quarter for which you're filling the form out. Form 941 is due on the last day of the quarter following the period for which you're filing. For example, you'd file the form by April 30th to cover wages paid in January, February, and March. The other deadlines are July 31st, October 31st, and January 31st. In this case, I'm going to choose option 1. I'm filing by April 30th to cover wages paid in January, February, and March. Then you'll type in or write in, if you're hand filling the form, your business's EIN number, name, and address. I'm going to provide this information for a sample business. Since this is a US-based business, I'm going to leave the bottom 3 boxes there blank. Okay, moving on to part 1, which is the most important part of the form because this is where you'll be providing compensation and tax information. Remember that you should only be providing numbers for the quarter that the filing covers. For instance, if you're filling out this form for the April 30th deadline, you would only provide wage and withholding information for January, February, and March. So if you hired a new employee and started paying them in April, that individual's information should not appear on this form for that filing. It's easy to break down wage and withholding information by quarter if you use accounting software or payroll software. Start with the number of employees in line 1. These could be full-time, part-time, or seasonal employees, anyone who received wages during the quarter, with the exception of independent contractors, farm workers, and household employees. You should also exclude seasonal workers for whom you did not pay any wages this quarter. In our example, we'll pretend that we have 3 employees for ABC Bakery LLC. In line 2, enter the gross amount of wages, tips, and other types of compensation that those employees received. Compensation can include things like bonuses, fringe benefits, and employee expense reimbursements. In this example, let's just assume for simplicity's sake that each of our 3 employees received $50,000 in total compensation, giving us a grand total of $150,000 for the 3 employees. In line 3, you'll note the amount of federal income taxes that you've withheld from your employees this quarter. Now, this amount will obviously depend on each employee's federal tax bracket, the choices they made on their W-4 withholding form, as well as if they're using pre-tax money for any purpose like a retirement account. Again, if you use payroll software, that software should easily show you how much federal income taxes you've collectively withheld for the quarter. In this example, we'll just say that ABC Bakery LLC withheld $30,000 in total from all employees. In lines 5A to 5D, you'll note down the total wages that were subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes. Now, if none of the wages were subject to Social Security or Medicare tax, you check off this box here next to line 4 and skip down to line 6. But in most cases, most or all of the wages that you've paid will be subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes. Under current law, the first $132,900 of an employee's wages are subject to Social Security tax, but this wage limit changes typically from year to year, so make sure you know the current limit as you go to fill out the form. If any employee's wages exceed that limit, the amount that you note in column 1, line 5A will be smaller than the amount noted in line 2. All wages are subject to Medicare taxes without limit, and employees earning above $200,000 per year pay a Medicare surtax. In this example, we'll say that all of the wages that ABC Bakery paid are subject to Social Security taxes. So this number is going to match up with what's in line 2. ABC Bakery did not pay any tips to employees. They're a tip-free business, so I'm going to leave line 5B blank. And in line 5C, I'm going to put down the $150,000 again because there's no limit on the wages that are subject to Medicare tax. None of ABC Bakery's employees earned more than $200,000 for the year, so I'm going to leave box 5D blank as well. Now, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicare surtax are 3 different tax rates, which the IRS has conveniently provided on the form here for you, so you simply have to do the multiplication. If I multiply $150,000 by 0.124, I get $18,600. And if I multiply $150,000 by 0.029, I get $4,350. Okay, and now I add up everything in column 2 and put it down in box 5E. That equals $22,950. You would skip line 5F unless the IRS has sent you a section 3121Q notice about unreported or underreported tips. In line 6, you'll need to add up lines 3, 5E, and 5F if there's anything in the 5F box. So adding those up, I get $52,950. Lines 7 to 9 are for positive or negative adjustments that you might have to make to the amount of taxes that you owe. Adjustments that reduce the amount of taxes should be indicated with a minus sign or parentheses. Fractions for cents is sometimes needed as an adjustment because of rounding in your payroll system. The employee share of taxes might actually be higher or lower than the amounts you've withheld. You might have to reduce the employee share of taxes if you have an insurance company or other third party which paid sick leave benefits and withheld the taxes from employees' wages. And if you haven't finished collecting taxes on employee tips or group term life insurance, that requires a negative adjustment as well. In our example, let's just make a $1.30 positive adjustment due to rounding in our payroll system. If I account for that adjustment and add it to line 6, I'm going to get $52,951.30. Line 11 actually lets businesses offset their FICA taxes by claiming a credit for certain kinds of research activities. If this applies to you, and you can find out if it does by reading the instructions on Form 8974, you would simply attach the filled out Form 8974 to this form, note down the amount of the credit you're claiming, and in line 12, subtract the credit from your tax due. In this case, I'm going to leave line 11 blank since ABC Bakery is not claiming a research credit. And line 12 is going to be identical to line 10. Line 13 has to do with tax deposits. In addition to filing Form 941 quarterly, you'll also need to deposit withheld income taxes and FICA taxes on an ongoing basis. The deposit schedule is either monthly or semi-weekly, depending on the size of your business's tax liability. Indicate here how much you've deposited for the quarter. Ideally, this should match up with line 12, but you might have an underpayment or overpayment. If you have an underpayment, you would pay the difference either along with this form or through the Electronic Federal Tax Payment System, EFTPS. And if you've made an overpayment, the IRS will either send you a check as your refund or apply the overpayment to your next return. These other forms that you see here are amended returns. If you make a mistake on your Form 941, you have to file 941X, the amended version of the return. In this example, I'm going to say that ABC Bakery had a $10 overpayment. So I would indicate that amount of the overpayment here in line 15. And in this case, since it's such a small amount, ABC Bakery is just choosing to have the difference applied to their next return. Okay, on to part 2, but first make sure you note down your business name and EIN number at the top. This is just to ensure that the IRS does not lose any of your paperwork. In part 2, you'll provide information to the IRS about your tax deposit schedule. As I said before, most employers must deposit withheld income tax and the employee and employer's share of Social Security and Medicare taxes. You'll either follow a monthly or semi-weekly deposit schedule depending on the amount of taxes that you pay during a 1-year look-back period, which is July 1st through June 30th. If your taxes during that period are $50,000 or less, then you're a monthly depositor. If your taxes are more than $50,000 during that period, you're a semi-weekly depositor. In this example, we're going to assume that ABC Bakery is on a semi-weekly schedule, and we'll check off the bottom box. If you're on a monthly schedule, you would check off this middle box here and break down your liability for each month of the quarter and provide the total. That total must match the total that was in line 12 in part 1. And if it doesn't match up, go back and check your math because you probably made an error somewhere. If you're a semi-weekly schedule depositor, you'll need to complete Schedule B for Form 941 and attach it to this form. Part 3 only applies to you if you're closing down your business or if you have seasonal employees and don't file a return for every quarter of the year because you don't employ people during every quarter of the year. I'm going to leave both of those blank since neither of those apply to ABC Bakery. In Part 4, you need to indicate if you'd like to allow your tax preparer, lawyer, or another third party to discuss your form with the IRS. In this example, I'm going to assume that the CEO of ABC Bakery personally filled out this form, so there's no need to allow another person to discuss the form with the IRS. But in many cases, you might want to allow your tax preparer or a lawyer to discuss this form on your behalf. Lastly, in Part 5, you'll need to provide your name, your title, your phone number, and date and sign the form. You can only sign and date after you print the form, so I'm going to leave those blank for now, just to fill out the other information. So we'll say Betty Business is filling out this form for ABC Bakery, and she is the CEO of the business. And I'll provide her phone number. This last box is only relevant if you hired somebody to fill out your form. And if that's the case, the paid preparer will need to sign and provide their information here. The last page of Form 941, if you scroll down to the bottom, is a payment voucher. This is included in case you're sending in payment of taxes along with your Form 941. Not all businesses are allowed to send in payment with Form 941. But in some cases, if your tax liability is pretty low, you can send in payment. Otherwise, most businesses make payments and deposits with the electronic tax payment system. And that's it for Form 941, everyone. Thank you for watching. Follow fundera.com/blog to find more information needed to start and run a small business. And follow our YouTube channel for more videos.